ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
I apologize for the weather. If you were here yesterday, it was beautiful. It's like it used to be, like it should be. But this morning turned nasty. But the weather is changing rapidly, so I hope for the better very soon. Welcome to the 12th conference of the National Academy of Management and Business in cooperation with Vistula University. The theme of the conference, as you know, is Management in Turbulent Times, an Returning Economic Crisis, what the world should learn from Central and Eastern Europe transitional economies. Before coming to this room, I checked stock indices are falling like a stone. DAX is almost 2% down after very bad news this morning. So it's a very timely conference about crisis that's been unraveling, unfortunately. Let me welcome Professor Meyer Ross, Chief Editor of the National IAMB Journal, National Journal of Management and Business. And also, if people have questions about the journal, they should ask and talk to Dr. Ross. Here it is. Welcome Professor Alexander Sulejewicz, Warsaw School of Economics, member of IAMB Advisory Board, and member of the organizing committee of this conference. And he is with us over there. I would like to very warmly welcome our honorable partners from India. They joined us this morning. Let me welcome Dr. Sandeep Machpande, Chairman and Managing Trustee of IAMB Group of Institutes. Let me also welcome his wife, Mrs. Riti Machpande, who is also a member of the governing body of the IAMB Group. Let me welcome Professor Mr. and Mrs. Kulkarni, Professor J. Kulkarni, and his wife from the same group are joining us today. Welcome. Let me also welcome Mr. Mehmet Eskici, who is the Chairman of the Board of Trustees of Vistula University. I said joining us from Istanbul, but he is flying 100 flights a year, so I don't know where your flight came from, but international person and chairman of our board. Let me welcome Mr. Chancellor Ari Velko, Chancellor of Vistula University, Deputy Director Professor Jan Fazdagic will chair the first session. And last but not least, conferences happen because there are people who organize them. So I should thank very warmly to Mrs. Magda Ugorska, who helped this conference happen. Let me just spend 5 minutes showing you why these conferences are very important. I'm a theorist and practitioner of monetary policy. I spent a couple of years as a central banker running monetary policy for this country. And I should say that in terms of crisis management, monetary policy is nowhere today. Over the last 40 years, both theory and practice of monetary policy went bankrupt 3 times. In the 1960s, we had important papers of Keynes, Samuelson, Solow. They got Nobel Prizes for their work, and they are telling us that monetary policy should be activist, that there is a trade-off. If you increase inflation a bit, unemployment would fall. They did. And in the 70s, 10 years later, we had high inflation, high unemployment, and monetary policy was bankrupt for the first time. In the 70s, we thought this was wrong. There was the Nobel Prize winners' works of Friedman, Phelps, Lucas, who said, oh no, we should not control the interest rates. Money matters. Let's control money supply. The monetary policy went on controlling the money supply. 10 years later, in the 1980s, it turned out that you cannot control money supply because of technological changes. And again, monetary policy theory and practice went bankrupt. Then in the 1990s, you had a new fashion, theory and practice, based on Nobel Prize winners' work like Cridak and Prescott, on important work of Calvo, Barrow, and Gordon, saying monetary policy should be focused on inflation and we should use inflation targeting as a tool. And we did this, including this country, in 20, 30 countries around the world. And guess what? Focusing on inflation, we missed bubbles in financial markets. And bubbles crashed, and we have now 5th year of ongoing crisis. 3rd time, both theory and practice of monetary policy went bankrupt. We are now in the 4th stage, when we all think something, printing money helps. Guess what? We're going back to the 1960s when people believed in activist monetary policy, but this time on a scale 10 times as big as we believed 1960s was appropriate. So there's a big circle we did over the last 40 years, we're back where we started from. At that time, it went back not just after a few years. What I'm saying is this, that every time there's an economist, it usually he or she wins the Nobel Prize, gets some central banker who believes in his theory. 10 years later, people suffer from high inflation, high unemployment, and there's a new guy or woman coming that gets Nobel Prize by saying that the previous Nobel Prize winner was an idiot. Okay? That's where we are. In terms of monetary policy, it's a crisis management tool. So I hope that when you discuss how to manage businesses or economies in times of crisis, this will contribute to the theory and practice of policy making, because we badly need this, because we really know what today in terms of crisis management policies. And again, the subtitle of the conference is to learn from our region, and I'm happy to say that Poland was the only country in 2009 in the European Union that did not have a recession. So there is something in this country, in economic management, in the structure, in the financial supervision, that did help us to grow despite the fact that Europe and the world was in deep recession. Many countries over the last few years lost 10, 20% of GDP, like Greece. Some countries lost 5% of GDP. Poland, in this period, grew by more than 15%. So there is something to be learned from Polish experience, how to handle the country in economic crisis. And I hope you will share these lessons at today's conference. Ladies and gentlemen, excuse for my lengthy introduction, but I wanted to share with you monetary policy misfortunes over the last few decades, and I hope you have fruitful discussion, you have great conference, and great weather. Welcome again.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me in the back? Again, I'm I'm the address for all your complaint and compliment. Now, just a few announcements, and for those who are not here, and then you talk to them later, please convey what I'm saying right now. If you have any question or any request, either see me, or you could see my helper. My main assistant didn't show up, but I'm Carol, I'm sorry. If you have any questions, just see Carol or see me or see Magdalena. We're here to help. This session is going to be divided later on into two separate rooms. One, we're going to stay here. Because the room is very large, we ask that the people will sit in the front so that we don't have to shout for the back to hear. So this would be one room. This is the main auditorium. The second room is going to be the Senate room, or room 21. We're going to have signs, but basically down the corridor on the other end. That will be the what we call in the program room number 2. So for the chair people and for you, just know where it is. We're going to have, I don't know if all of you look at the program, but we're going to have a break after a few sessions. The break is going to be right outside the auditorium. It's going to be coffee and what have you. Lunch, it's going to be also outside the auditorium. The food is going to be served, but the sitting area is actually in the cafeteria. For logistic reason or whatever, we can't have serving the food where we're going to sit, so you have to take the food and go and sit at the cafeteria. In the evening at 7:15 we have a reception at the Novotel Hotel. I don't know if all of you read the instruction, but if not, just look at the instructions that you've been given how to get to the hotel. It's complimentary, and we would love to see everybody there. I have one request from the chair people, is that we have about 29 countries represented here. So some speak very well English, some not very well. Just make sure you pronounce the name correctly so that people don't get insulted. And for those who are very, very fluent in English, just be a little bit slower so that everybody can understand what you're saying. And I welcome everybody and thank you for being here, and I hope you have an enjoyable conference. Thank you.
My name is Jan Fazlagic, and here is Dr. Agata Kudzińska-Czapara. We are co-chairing this first chair. We have planned 4 speakers. The rule for this session is that 15 minutes for the presentation and about 5 minutes for taking questions. We hope you will find those presentations interesting, so we will not have to ask the questions that will come from the audience. And here we have the first presenter, Mr. Wasim Abaza from the United States. Please take the floor.
Let me please one word for speakers. I have such a ring, and I will let you know 3 minutes before the end that the time is short. Okay?
All right, good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Good? All right. Let me just say, when I first submitted my paper, I thought I would be lucky to have it accepted. I had no idea that I would be the first speaker of the entire conference. So this is both an honor and very nerve-wracking for me. But hopefully you'll enjoy it. As the chairman said, my name is Wasim Abaza. I'm a PhD candidate at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, in the US. I think my topic is very much connected to what the opening statement was for today. The idea of my topic is to look at the identity of an organization. So the opening remarks were that a lot of the policies that we implement them and then they fail. We implement them and then they fail. My idea is that we need to step back and look at the identity of the organization before we start looking at the implementation. What is the purpose of the organization, and how can we create or change the purpose to fit what it is that we want to accomplish? So, my idea is that organizational identities are actually social constructs. They're not things that are set in stone. My conceptual argument is that the internal identity created by the members of the organization should be in congruence with the external identity created by external stakeholders in order to facilitate goal accomplishment. So the logic. Goals of any organization are very dependent upon external stakeholders. The internal identity is usually created and generally agreed upon by the internal members of the organization. The external identity is the perception of the organization's identity by external stakeholders. Both identities, both the internally created one and the externally created one, create a reality in which both operate. And if these two are in congruence, if they are in agreement, if they are the same, then it will facilitate goal achievement for the organization by giving access to resources and other needed resources for the goal. So, real briefly, I'm going to go through social constructionism in both psychology and political science because both apply directly to international institutions. So in psychology, the idea of social constructionism is that all knowledge is actually created through social interaction. There's no concept that is set in stone and universally accepted. The modern conception of social constructionism in psychology was created by Kenneth Gergen. He was interested in looking at how people understand the world, and boiled down, he has a large body of knowledge. Boiled down, there's really 2 main points. Meaning is more important than action, and that there's an inherent power in language. So, meaning behind action, this was first introduced by Carl White. He was interested in sense-making in organizations. This is the creation of knowledge and how people understand what they're supposed to do within organizations. It requires a frame of understanding. So, what he calls an inherited vocabulary, which we'll talk about in a second. But this process is a creation of knowledge, creation of reality, creation of understanding through social processes rather than one that is set by the top and just disseminated down. Language. The idea of language, the power of language in creating knowledge was first introduced by Berger and Luckman in 1967. Language is used to maintain reality. It's something that's commonly agreed upon. So in and of itself, it is a social process. We need to agree on a common language. For instance, I'm speaking English right now because that's my main language, it's my first language. And it's something that we commonly agreed upon to speak here for most presentations. That's a way for me to understand, but again, we have to make concessions. I have to slow down, so please tell me if I'm speaking too fast. Don't throw anything, please, I would ask. Just raise your hand and tell me to slow down. The other thing is, all that we know, all of the knowledge, all of our individual knowledge is translated to the language that we understand, which means that understanding knowledge and reality is very context specific. It's based on the language that we speak in our individual communities. As such, because of the diversity of language, there's no commonly agreed upon reality. You cannot have a universal reality or universal understanding because of all the different languages that we speak. In political science, it's primarily used to describe international institutions. It does not presuppose a single definition of what an institution is. Again, going back to the psychology concept, because of the various language and various ways that we understand, we cannot have a single definition of what an institution is. There are three types of socially constructed institutions in political science. They are all able to adjust to changes. They're all based on social commonalities such as culture, language, regional interests, etc. And they're very communication dependent. Again, going back to language, you cannot have an institution without having communication. You have to communicate those your understandings, your sense making. You have to speak to each other in order to formulate what is an international institution. The first type is a social structure. These are groups that are based on shared understandings, and this could be anything. It's very loose. There's no formal organization to these kinds of structures. So you can have things like sovereignty being a social structure, a concept. The second type is a regional association. So these are based on formal and informal rules that facilitate interaction. So again, there's no formal organization, but there are formal rules for how we interact. Again, created from common norms and values, i.e. they're socially constructed, and they're shared, based on shared concepts of understanding and knowledge. The final type is a formal institution. This is where those rules of interaction are actually formalized into creating a new organization. So in the previous one, it was different groups coming to speak and creating norms and rules for how they're going to interact. Here, a completely new organization is created. And that's created based on those interactions, based on those discussions. So, organizational identity. This is actually based on individual identity research that was then applied to organizational identity. It was first introduced by Albert and Len in 1985. There are three criteria that they proposed for an organizational identity. The first is claim central character. This is what identifies the essence of the organization. What is it? What is the purpose of the organization? Now, throughout, I'm going to use the example of the European Union. I'm going to use a very generalized example to make it very simple. Again, the European Union is a very large organization. It can be very complex, so I can't go into a great deal of detail. So I'm just going to go over some very basics. So claim central character of the EU would be its origins as an economic union. As we all know, the European Union started as a coal and steel community, and then grew into an economic union, then grew into what we presently know as the European Union. Second is a claim distinctiveness. Whereas the first looks at what is the purpose of the organization, the second is how is that purpose different from other organizations. So in case of the European Union, again, it's a very European identity as opposed to a North American or an Asian or a Middle Eastern identity. That is what differentiates it from other organizations. The last is a claim temporal continuity, which means some form of the identity persists over time. So for the EU, that identity is very much a post-World War II identity. The coal and steel community was created as a means to recreate and restart the economy of the post-World War II economies in Europe. So, internal identity. It's not just the sum of the individual members' identities. So if you have an organization that has 100, 200 people, it's not the sum of 200 identities. It's actually an overarching identity for the organization that is created through the interactions of the members. Elsack and Van Riel published an article in 2004 where they were looking at what the importance of accepting that identity in the organization and how that influences the organization. Very ironically, they wanted to control for this variable called agreement. And what they actually found was agreement was much more important than acceptance. So acceptance is the idea that, that all the members, they have an identity in their mind, and whether or not they believe that that identity is the true identity of the organization. That's actually irrelevant to the creation of an organizational identity. What's more important is that they all agree on what the identity is. Whether or not they accept it, whether or not all of them accept it as the true identity is not important. And then later on, he found that agreement is actually the driving force behind behavior and identification within the organization. External identity is a little harder to define. There's not much research I could find out there on it. Most commonly, it's understood as the reputation or the image of the organization by external members. So the proposed relationship. Excuse me. International institutions, they have specific goals, multiple goals, but for every specific goal they have, those goals are based on the perceived purpose or identity of the organization. Again, connecting the identity to the purpose of the organization. And these goals require external stakeholders. Can I get some? I got a little lost on the way coming in, so I had to walk a little bit, and I lost a little bit of my voice. Again, first speaker of the day, it's going to happen. So, who the external stakeholders are is going to depend on the specific goal. So every goal is going to have different stakeholders involved. And then the support that's provided takes many forms: information, resource, access, etc. I must have walked a lot more than I thought. So these external stakeholders, they interact with the organization based on the reality that they create from their identity. So the identity that the external stakeholders create for the organization will create a reality in which they will interact with that organization. If the two align, then the organization itself will be more likely to get access to the resources that those external stakeholders can provide. Again, there needs to be constant monitoring of the congruence in order to minimize the harmful effects of a discongruence. So here's a proposed relationship in graphical form. We have an identity. So for the EU, one identity is to have a strong economic institution. This translates into a reality, operating as a strong economic union. So the internal members are operating as though they are in a strong economic union. This then translates into the purpose, to maintain that economy and to maintain the stability of the euro. So if the internal identity of the European Union is that there's a strong economic institution, and the external identity is that that the European Union is a strong economic institution, then the EU can have more access to things like investment, opening investment opportunities, opening new markets for trade, etc. If the identities are not congruent, if the external stakeholders do not believe the EU is a strong union, then they may not necessarily provide that kind of access. Any questions? Did I speak too fast? Yes.
It's not a question, it's a comment.
Yes.
I would suggest for you to add to your model a feedback loop that will allow you to have a dynamic model of identity creation.
Yes, that's a very good idea. Social constructionism, the theory in general, presupposes a feedback loop. It presupposes the dynamic quality of identities. So they are constantly changing as the individual members change. So if you have a large influx of new members and a large outflux of members, the identity can change because it's dependent upon the agreement of the members. So yes, you're correct. There should be a dynamic quality to the model. Yeah.
Can you go back one slide? Go back one slide. Yeah. You're a doctorate candidate. Have you done your qualification yet?
I just did, yes.
You just did?
Yeah.
Okay. My comment was is that that would be interesting at the end to have your conceptual frame to wrap up everything, because there's a lot of information here. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So that's why you were not quick, but there's something missing here for me to just to retake everything that you presented here.
Okay.
That's only a suggestion. It's easier to wrap up.
So
One more slide.
one more slide with the.
Put everything together, and then PowerPoint.
Okay. Yes.
Very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
And however, I think my comment would be rather towards the conceptual framework as well. For example, you refer to social identity theory, but I'm not completely aware where you are in the literature review. For example, you talk about external identity, but in social identity theory, image has been deeply investigated by different researchers. So maybe you would like to go into the literature on image, not on the Michael Schultz.
Right.
But Newton.
Yes and no. You're correct. Image has been researched, but not in a social identity framework, not in a socially constructed identity framework.
Yeah, but that's how Michael Schultz is working, and Jane Newton. They are based on this social constructivist framework. And then another issue is reality. When you talk about socially constructed approach to research, there's nothing like reality. It's more positivist approach. You don't use the word reality so much because it's a positivist approach. Because reality assumes there is a reality, there is nothing. From the framework you use,
right. In social constructionism, they redefine the word reality.
Because you don't have reality.
Exactly. That's the point. There's no objective reality. So there's no reality that we can all point to and say that is true. There is contextual reality or community-based reality. So what I know to be true. So for instance, I'm wearing a tie to this presentation because I believe that ties need to be worn at presentations. That's a reality based on my upbringing and my experience in my department. I have colleagues in other departments and other fields that don't believe you should wear a tie. My reality is that you should. Their reality is that you shouldn't. And that way, so in that case, there's no universality between us.
But I would just be aware if you submit the paper to the journal, because this can be criticized.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, that's very good information.
Just go more into literature.
Okay, so go deeper into defining reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, okay. Yes.
Thank you. I find this presentation very interesting. But what I'm wondering is your standpoint. Are you emphasizing the inside out or outside in perspective? Meaning, which one of the identities you are trying to emphasize, the internal or the external?
I'm not. I'm not emphasizing either identity specifically. What I'm emphasizing is that the organization itself has to monitor both, has to be aware of both.
Yeah, that's correct. But there are different perspectives emphasizing either inside out or outside in approach. People or organization usually emphasize the inside out and internal identity versus the public relations in other media and communication. Theoreticians emphasize external identity. So there are different frameworks. So I think at one point or another, you have to mention where you are framing and where you're standing.
Right. In some sense, that's correct in terms of which group is emphasizing which. My stance is more of the organization itself has to be aware of the internal and also be aware of the image that it's projecting at the same time. So equally. So I would say both those groups have to get together and talk.
That doesn't usually take place in organizations. That's the problem.
Right. That is the problem.
And in the European Union, how would you address multiple identities?
Address what?
In European, there's a superordinate identity, but we are having many multiple identities and multiple images, especially in the...
It's based on the goal. So, whoa, what just happened?
So you don't have just one internal identity. That's kind of an issue with Europe also.
Right. Where is it? I had a slide in here. very goal specific. So each goal is going to have an identity. Each goal is going to have a reality based to it, and each goal is going to have a different set of stakeholders. And so that identity has to be translated for each goal. So you're right, EU is a very large organization, that's why I said I had to be very general with it, because of all these multiple levels and all the multiple identities involved. So you have to very much look at the goal that you're trying to achieve at any specific time, and look at how the identity is translated into that goal, and which stakeholders you need to be aware of.
I think that could be the last question, because we have to keep the agenda.
Okay.
Before I invite the next speaker, Denis Boru, I would like to share with you one anecdote. I heard about this experiment in the United States where there was 40 people, 20 males and 20 females, and they were engaged in a matchmaking experiment. I don't know if you heard about this. And the purpose of this experiment was that they communicate without using any words. The only word they could use was pass the salt. And after the experiment, the story goes that 3 couples got married after this, just because you're talking about the words, but the context is also important. So the way you say pass the salt can make you married, yes?
I'm going to keep that in mind. I'll remember that.
Okay. So thank you very much, and Denis Boru.
Thank you very much. My name is Deniz Boru from Turkey, from Warsaw University. It's a misfortune to speak after a US origin speaker, but I hope you can understand me easily. My topic is ethical climate, organizational trust, and organizational commitment. We are 4 of us as a researcher. First, I'd like to tell about some literature review. Organizational commitment is a common and important construct in behavioral studies. Researchers analyze the existence of the commitment to provide awareness into employees' commitment. Many studies try to explore essential elements that affect organizational commitment both at individual and organizational levels, such as characteristics of employees, culture, and human resources policy in the practice. Allen and Meyer have categorized the factors affecting organizational commitment into 3 classes: personal characteristics, work experience, and organizational characteristics. It has been further conceptualized as a multidimensional construct consisting of 3 components: effective, continuous, and normative commitment. Effective commitment refers to employees' emotional attachment to identification with and involvement in the organization. Continuous commitment refers to an awareness of the cost associated with the leading the organization. Normative commitment reflects a feeling of obligation to continue employment. The 3-component model proposed that employees remain within an organization because of their desire to remain, a recognition that the first cost associated with leaving would be high and/or feeling of obligation to remain. Although an employee could experience all 3 components to varying degrees, each component was considered to develop independently and expert difference effects on work behavior. Cook and Wolf claimed that trust, which is our second variable, that trust is an important factor leading to organizational commitment. Many studies confirm that the trust contributes to organizational commitment, job satisfaction, and employee turnover. Organizational trust is a feeling of confidence and support in an employer that it's the belief that an employer will be honest, open, and will flow through all commitments. Each round defines trust as one party's willingness to be vulnerable to another party based on belief that the later party is competent, open, concerned, and reliable. The perception of the trust is created with the existence of this factor collectively. 10 and 10 and positive predictors of organization commitment, and a significant and negative predictor of the employee turnover intention. And the other research demonstrate trust in the organization to be antecedent to the organizational commitment. In both high and low individual job concurrence situations, trust in management is a positive and significant predictors of subordinates. Satisfaction with work, supervision, promotion, co-workers, overall job satisfaction, and subordinates' performance. High trust in management also result in high effective and continuous commitment among subordinates. Our third variable, ethical climate, organizational, I'm going to explain. Organization characteristics also lead to commitment. One of these characteristics is ethical climate. Vistula University first introduced the construct of the ethical climate in 1987. They define it as the shared perception of what deems ethically correct behavior and the way ethical issues should be handled within an organization. However, they did not intend to develop a measure of organizational morality, but rather to describe different types of ethical climates that may emerge. The Victor Cullen framework refers to egoism, benevolence, and principle dimensions. The second dimension is the locus of analysis. The concept originates the sociological theory and later applied to organizational context. The levels of these levels were categorized as local and cosmopolitan. The local locus refers to the organization itself. External to the organization is the cosmopolitan locus, which refers to the community or society at large. Additionally, Victor Cullen described another reference known as individual locus. Without organizational norms, the individual makes decisions alone at this locus. Combining the dimension of ethical creation and the locus of analysis result in 9 theoretical climatic types. We are going to see it here as the 9 dimensions of the study. From this conceptual framework of the ethical climate questionnaire was developed a measure various perception of the ethical climate types. This instrument is, on the whole, the most fully developed, widely used, and accepted measure of ethical climate variable to date. Again, 9 dimensions, theoretical climate types. Since people tend to accept and internalize the climate of the organization in which they work, the perception of the climate can have an important impact on their attitudes and behavior. A good example may be research on the influence of ethical climates on organizational commitments. Research has shown organizational commitment should be lower when the ethical climate is perceived as egoistic and higher when the climate is perceived as benevolent or principled. Employees will feel more emotionally attached to an organization that supports values such as caring for employees and work community and adherence to ethical principles. Organizational commitment is negatively correlated with the egoistic individual climates, whereas positively correlated with benevolent, local, and benevolent cosmopolitan climates. And now I'm going to explain our research. Based on the literature, the aim of the study is to analyze the distinction of the contribution of ethical climate and organizational trust on different levels of organizational commitment. This is our study model. I'm going to explain all these dimensions. A multi-dimensional questionnaire was used to organizational commitments, ethical climates, and organizational trust. Respondents have answered these questions on a 5-point interval scale ranging from strongly agree to disagree. Data of the study were collected from employees working in Istanbul. Participation in the study was voluntary. 1,000 questionnaires were distributed in 2 weeks and return was 67%. And There is a mistake here, I'm sorry. Females should be 43.8. And females, actually 56.2 males, responded were very highly educated, 77 university graduation. And we divided in two groups our sample. 70% of the data set was useful for constructing a model we called analysis sample, and 30% of the data set was used for the testing model, hold-out sample we called. The aim of the study was to analyze the distinction of the contribution of ethical climate and organizational trust on different levels of organizational commitment. Therefore, three-dimensional organizational commitments, effective, continuous, and normative, were first transformed into low, moderate, and high levels of commitments. Series of the discriminant analyses were conducted with the purpose of profiling and differentiation of the effective, continuous, and normative commitment levels with ethical, climate, and organizational trust dimensions. The analysis sample was used to form the models, and the effectiveness of our profile description were tested on the hold-out sample. Here is our result for the first step, effective commitment. Result after all significant variables have been included in the estimation of the discrimination function. Only one function, first function, is significant. These seven variables of the significant discriminator of the effective commitment. First function, which is highly significant, explains 99% of the variance of the effective commitment. Moreover, discriminant function of the effective commitment has a high canonical correlation value, 0.732. Sorry. Yes. And the normative commitment. Here is again only one, and the first function is significant. First function, which is highly significant, explains 99 of the variance of the normative commitment. Moreover, discriminant function of the normative commitment has a moderate canonical correlation value of 0.48. And the continuous commitment, for the continuous commitment, only one function. Personal morality, the only discriminating variable of the continuous commitment, was not significant, although the overall model and the canonical correlation function were significant. However, the canonical correlation is significant but very weak. The results revealed that the employees with the dissimilar levels of the commitment differ in terms of their perceived ethical climate and organizational trust. Furthermore, ethical climate and organizational trust dimensions that explain these differentiations are distinct from effective, normative, and continuous commitment. Here is some of our study that show that effective commitment, continuous commitment, and normative commitment explained by the dependent variables. There is some negative effect, relation, and there is a common things on the screen. Only two discriminating variables are common for effective and normative commitment. So the right coefficient presenting relative contribution of its variable. Objective performance at present has negative contribution to effective commitment, and social responsibility has negative contribution to normative commitment. So because of the time limitation, I'd like to pass all these explanations that explain that our study is I'm sorry, I also forget what I'm going to say. We studied into two parts of the sample. These parts show that our study is a good a model we can use for the two sample groups. And the last, we also have the differentiation between for the females and the males. And the female responded for the effective commitment, honesty and fairness, team interest, and male for the male respondent and also team interest and honesty is the common variables. As a result, the result revealed why employees with different levels of effective commitment differ in terms of their perceived ethical climate and organizational trust. The ethical climate and organizational trust dimension that explains this differentiation are distinct for females and males. This is the female respondent clinical coordination. And the function explanation shows us that 99% of the variance in technology commitment for females has high clinical correlation. And here is the sum of our study. Variable with the highest contribution are honest and fair business attitudes, team interest, considering employees' need and the self-interest for females, creating commitment, positive image, team interest, law and professional codes, honest and fair business attitudes have the highest contribution for the males. I'm going to pass over these things. And conclusion, the result of the study indicates that the employees differ in their level of commitment according to their perceived ethical climate and organizational trust. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions too?
Hi, Denise. I have one specific clarification question. It's about the sample, okay? Because you conclude with the female and male aspect. And from what I've seen in your presentation, there's an important disproportion between the males and females. Isn't it a problem in relation to the particularity of the sample?
No, there is a mistake on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
33.
Okay, not 3.
Not 3.
Okay,
33.
sorry, I missed that.
It's
Okay.
my mistake.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
I enjoyed the presentation. I might have missed it, but did you say social responsibility has negative effect on normative continuous dimension of the commitment? Could you explain that? I might have misunderstood it.
Like I said, social responsibility for the normative commitment, yes, has a negative effect. Yeah, in our study, we also
Is it related with the nature of the organizations or what?
actually, we didn't consider this question, but maybe because of the sample group, because it's a voluntary sampling, so it should be same, maybe in the same organization, should be different. Actually, we'll
You might clarify. Yes, we do that.
Yes. Yeah, it should be maybe. Yeah, thank you very much.
I've got a question related to the practical relevance of your ethical climate measurement. There are companies worldwide who are investing a lot of money, a lot of time in developing compliance standards, compliance measurements, and I would be interested if there are any studies relate the ethical climate you're mentioning, this measurement, with the effectiveness of compliance measurement.
Well, it's a very complicated question for me. Thank you for asking me. Actually, this is the first time we are studying for the ethical climate, so it's maybe should be developed in other ways to measure the ethical climate. Actually, it's very hard to measure in the organizations, but in my opinion, according to Turkish observations, companies, effective commitment is very, very important for us. So the ethical climate and the trust is the major factors for our companies. So I believe that for the effective commitment, to establish an effective commitment, ethical climate should be here, but I don't know how to measure or what kind of measurement we should use. That's all you can answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the questions. Thank you, Professor. Now I have the pleasure to ask Professor Eric Dorion from Brazil, who will tell us about the spirit of knowledge creation organization.
Good morning. Before I start talking about the article itself, I have to contextualize why such article is being presented this morning. So I'm Eric. I'm a professor of business administration in the private university in Brazil. I learned English in Canada, so I don't have a Portuguese accent. That helps. The reason why this paper was created is within a PhD course that I give, which is called Advanced Organizational Studies. And the goal of this course is to have our students to write a theoretical paper about one of the areas that either join their research or not. But the goal is to have them think before they write, which is not that easy when you're a PhD student, okay? But you did a good job. And in that sense, the paper that I present is really what Zaida and Christine did in relation to Nonaka and Takeuchi work, okay, as a base from the framework of study. And they had to explore something, questioning the theory, and join them into a conceptual framework. And I call this a practice for the real thesis, okay? So basically, if we deal about Nonaka Takeuchi, the paper that you have in the proceedings refer to the following issue. I'll just read this quickly, and after that I'll get to the slides. Knowledge has been identified as one of the distinctive features that contribute to the competitive advantage of an organization. Also, it appears that the role of leadership within an organization is to provide knowledge through strategic visions, to motivate others, and to effectively communicate information in a collective context. So the individual to collectiveness aspect is being studied here. New elements associated with the model, care model, such as leadership generation from one individual to collective level. The intention with this discussion is to put in evidence the themes that study and question these issues in the literature and to stimulate stronger debate. So that's the idea of the paper. Whoops, of the paper. Hello? Hello? Are you hearing me? Okay? Okay, that's good. So basically what we have to think about is administration is interdisciplinary aspect, and when we refer to that, we understand that, especially in the Brazilian context, knowledge creation has become a main issue in terms of business development, especially in developing economies. There's a lot of work being made, starting in Japan, but in Brazil today, it's an issue that is being questioned, but not that really implemented. Okay. So, in reference to that, the literature review that was done through the idea is that in a deterministic way, which we call it the given, but I call it the reality, is that the available information creates a construct, which we call knowledge. But this leads into leadership in which way?
when we refer into an organizational situation that authority and leadership are being linked together through knowledge or not, and how is it being made. Okay? So the question through Nonaka and Takeuchi concept, the matter of the organization, know-how, management itself, the stakeholders, the actors, the power, the authority that people have, and the aspect of leadership. In relation to that, there's paths that are being established. One that comes from general information to the construct of knowledge, as I talked about briefly earlier. The path of organization authority, which is basically viewed through the neoclassical theory as really an obvious reality, through leadership, and then this path through the individual aspect of things, which is Nonaka's idea in his construct that we'll see, that knowledge is an individual reality, and how does it become a collective aspect, as he talks about, as they talked about, and the question that here especially. Okay. So, you know, for the ones that I've studied Nonaka Takeuchi, the 4 steps that really starts from the individual into the implementation into the business, the company, or the organizational reality is very interesting because there is a convergent aspect of understanding here. Okay? And Nonaka Takeuchi are really strong in establishing how this knowledge is being developed and spread within the organization. So, they come to basically their framework, okay? This is a conceptual framework, okay? Where you join 3, I don't know if it becomes clear, 3 axes, 3 arrows. The link from authority to leadership, the link between information and knowledge, and the path from individual to group dimensions where, and I apologize about the English, my fault, okay? Oh, sorry. Is it better? Oh, no, that's fine. Okay? Is it okay? Sorry about that. Where aspects can be discussed related authority and knowledge, authority and information, knowledge and leadership, and information and leadership. And the interesting aspect here is that you focus on criteria, on characteristics that can be studied in further types of studies, honestly. Okay? So, to conclude, Nonaka and Takeuchi, from an external perspective, have a strong tool that can be used to develop further types of study. Okay. Secondly, the theoretical framework based on the analysis from the individual aspect to group, okay, through knowledge, presents 2 types of analysis: the course of development of knowledge, okay, which is already something understood, and that can be matched with the path of authority to leadership. Also, if we look about Garrett Morgan's work, okay, in relation to knowledge understanding and knowledge application, Morgan has a metaphorical way of presenting things, but he does the match between, in one of his chapters, knowledge reality and the organizational aspect of things, which is crucial here. I'm going quickly because I just don't want to repeat myself here. Okay, if you get into an organizational context, then thinking about knowledge creation, structural authority towards leadership, and a beaming out between individual and collective learning, we can understand that this kind of leadership proposes leadership, an innovative fruits of way that permits the organization to innovate. Okay? So, I come back to the first words that I was explaining at the beginning. Why writing a theoretical paper? To me, it helps the person to understand better what they're doing into different empirical researchers. And I think today, if we look at us here, there's 29 countries involved, but we'll see that there are different types of countries involved. Okay, you were talking about Turkey, Brazil, China, India. The developing countries are becoming the richest countries today. The developed countries are getting into trouble. The world is changing. And if we don't rethink the way we build models, we're just repainting the same walls with more paint. Okay? So that's basically why I think theoretical papers are a quite interesting experience and have to be incentivized. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments, maybe? Please.
Could you, when you talked about creating those teams and putting the knowledge together, could you do that on a global basis or solely restricted to a particular location?
No, location was not an issue here, okay? I think it has to be an issue more than ever. For example, Michael Porter's model, which is famous, and he comes to São Paulo and he makes a lot of money with Brazilians, I think is a huge mistake. Exogenous way of doing things today gives less answers to endogenous realities. Brazil is a fast-growing economy with its problems and its advantages. Okay, so I think today studying administration is a different, has to be a different way. This paper, to me, is an exercise. It's a piece of the puzzle that comes to a thesis, more or less.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Please.
In your paper, you made a distinction between authority and leadership, and I was wondering whether this distinction was based upon the well-known distinction between management and leadership, or does it...
Okay, it's a very interesting question. It is distinct. Okay, authority in this case is being used through the neoclassical theory. Okay, through the organization. Authority is being defined and contextualized. Okay, leadership is a construct of a social management reality, meaning that knowledge is a link between the neo-theoretical neoclassical theory, and all the studies that touch leadership. So, in that sense, what I like from the student's point of view is that we have different paths in each company related to the same theory, which is neoclassical, but through Nobunaga Takeuchi, through knowledge creation, we do have to deal differently with leadership. It's totally different in every company. So we could then pursue studies about the legitimacy, yeah, that's correct, legitimacy of some of the models that are being applied anywhere, anyhow, blindly, okay, especially in Brazil. That was his question.
I was wondering if you have separated between knowledge creation and knowledge sharing. The reason is, I don't know if I follow you, but in some of the conferences concerning leadership, there were different emphases regarding obedience, for instance. And there's what we call in communication studies, spiral of silence. People do agree by authority because of obedience to their leaders in some contexts, whereas in other contexts, for instance, when people from Turkey, Japan, and other countries talk about obedience, some people from countries like US and UK were saying, what is the meaning of obedience within the context of leaders and followers? So, since you are contextualizing, I was wondering if you are taking into consideration the problems with communication and problems with communication related to knowledge sharing. in this context of spiral of silence?
Okay, your question is extremely interesting because in fact it proposes further studies. And what I mean in further studies is that the word here is very incipient. I don't know if it's English, meaning it's very limited on purpose, okay? Meaning that you can extend, you're touching one aspect, it's one arm into the tree, it's one branch that you could open. Here, understanding the context of the proposed idea. So let's get back to the aspect of knowledge creation, and you said expansion or transfer, dissemination. Nonaka Takeuchi already talks about that. Like, knowledge creation is a one-person thing. Okay, I'm a source of knowledge, but I'm among other people, and then I'm going to share these things. And we are going to agree on these things, and these things are going to be implemented or accepted by the company, and then implemented within the company. See, this is Nonaka Takeuchi's work. Okay, it's very simple. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so if you look at this and you say the neoclassical theory, 1930 something, an old thing, an old car. Okay, it still works. Okay, we use it on a daily basis. Sometimes we don't know we use it, but we use it. Okay, and then they say this is authority based on the author's view from that theory. Okay, so I'm not questioning the theory itself. Okay, it's one of the wheels of the car. It's there. Okay, so what the students are saying is that okay, but what's the relationship between this and leadership itself through knowledge creation? That's basically what the word says. So what you're suggesting here, I think you're suggesting what I'm asking. Okay, are more possible line of research, basically. And it's part of the same theoretical frame. That's my understanding of your comment. Hopefully answers.
The reason why I ask is I don't think you can separate creation of knowledge from sharing of knowledge in open innovation situations.
But it's not separated, it's sequential. The framework Nonaka. But where I separate, you know how it is to do a thesis. You have to treat each aspect, one and the other, and then you do identify your characteristic, you make your factors, and then you get this result. So the suggestion here is to help develop new ways of thinking about research.
Actually, the model is a little bit more complex. The model suggests that within each one of the 4 stages, there is an option for new knowledge creation.
Yes.
Which brings to the question of what kind of a leadership you have and authority that enables new knowledge creation, or it's just knowledge sharing. So I think your question is very well pointed because it's a little bit more richer about the potential for knowledge creation or sharing or both as a function or in the context of the leadership.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please welcome our last speaker, Mr. Angel Martinez Sanchez from Spain.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to present this paper about telework and work-life balance. I am from the University of Zaragoza in Spain. The paper is written with also 4 of my dear university colleagues who are seated here at the room this morning. This paper is the first stage of the research project that is financed by the Spanish Ministry of Education and Innovation. It's about the influence of telework on work-life balance and also organizational performance. I'm going to share with you some of the ideas that guided us in the developing of the research. I'm going to show the framework of the research, the proposed model. And even though we don't still have empirical results that we obtained from an empirical survey to a sample of public employees in our region. Real definition for those of you who are not familiar with the concept of telework. By telework we mean the organization of work by using information and communication technologies that enable employees and managers to get access to the labor activities from remote locations Based on this, it's possible to characterize 3 types of telework. First, home-based telework, where employees stay at home, at least not always, not usually full-time, but maybe several hours a week or several days a week. That's the most usual arrangements for employees. It's also possible to telework from sites called telework centers. I mean, offices that reduce the commuting of employees. Instead of going to the office, instead of going to the factories or laboratories, they go to these small offices where they can have access to the labor activities as well. And of course, teleworks could be the way that some employees usually work. Like, for example, managers who are on the move, salesmen, etc. That could be characterized as well as telework activities. Okay, as I said, the focus of our research is about telework and work-life balance. And what the literature says about telework and work-life balance is that there are basically 2 views on this. First, that telework may be part of the solution, means that can contribute to decrease conflict interface between work and family activities. But there are also ideas and empirical results in the literature that says that telework can be as well part of the problem. I mean, that telework in some situations can contribute even further to increase conflict. When we are talking about work-life balance, usually the literature focuses on conflict, maybe because conflict means problems and we have to do something to avoid those problems, we have to do something as a company to correct these behaviors. And usually the literature focuses on 2 different directions, because we can have one problem in one direction and not a problem in another direction. So the literature always talk about work-life conflict when work interferes negatively with one personal life, I mean family, personal life. And it's also possible to find what we call life-work conflict, when personal life, family life interferes negatively with work. So these are the 2 main directions that are usually researches in the literature. What are the main reasons behind the explanation of the positive influence of telework on work-life balance? Contributes to reduce commuting and also contribute to avoid meetings and interactions at the office, because you are not at the office, you are at home when you are in a telework center. So you can avoid this, and this contributes to less stress. And it's also one of the sources of conflict usually in the interface between work and family. Stress influence negatively on personal and family life. And also, reduced commuting allows to have more time flexibility. That way, people, fathers, mothers can combine more effectively work and family chores. But there are also some factors that influence negatively on work-life balance. Teleworkers sometimes have to attend unscheduled meetings, and these are more difficult to arrange when you are at home than when you are usually based at the office. Sometimes teleworkers tend to work longer hours or work at weekends. I mean, there is not the discipline of work that you can find at the office, so this can be a potential source of conflict with family. And of course, if you are home-based telework, you have to negotiate. You have to negotiate the roles of working inside the house. This can be another potential source of conflict. And of course, when you work at home, as I said, full time, it's possible to feel as isolation, as an college, that could be a source of stress. So there are also potential negative influences of telework on work-life balance. Also, it's important to say that the relationship between telework and work-life, work-family, conflict balance, whatever the measure you are using in your research, it's not linear. It's not a linear relationship. Most of the relationships could be linear and are moderated by several variables. Type of telework, of course, is an important variable. When home-based telework is the most promising source of beneficial for work-life balance. Also, time, as I said, is a very important variable. It's important. It's a very important variable because full-time telework is not very frequent. People try to telework only part of the time, part of the week. And there are also some other variables like job characteristics, job autonomy, the job autonomy you have at work that can influence this relationship. So it's important to include as many moderator variables as you can in your research. So what we did in this research, as I said, we are in the stage of developing now the empirical study. We have tried new things. First is to acknowledge that the work-life balance is not an end, but it means to an end. What I mean is that when you look at the empirical studies that use why people telework, you find that balancing work and family is not the main reason. It's actually in marginal reason. Most people telework because of employees' requirements. Not because of personal initiatives, but because of employees' requirements. So, as I said, we are not going to the work-life balance at the end, as an output of telework, but as mediator variables to obtain another positive inputs, another positive results. The second new idea, the second new approach is that I think we should pay more attention to the positive side of the work-family interface, because we use, as I said, we usually focus on the negative side. Okay, conflict, that's it. We try to decrease conflict. We have to avoid conflict. Okay, that's one side of the coin. But the work-family interface always have two coins, and always have two sides, as I said. And these two sides are not always related. Just because we can say that work-life conflict is a negative side of the coin, that doesn't mean that enrichment is the positive side. Of course, if you experience conflict, that means you have to experience positive side. No. The literature says that there are not significant relationships between this positive side and this negative side of work-life enrichment, of work-life interface. So we try to focus on work-life enrichment as another construct, as another as I said, as another variable that could offer another insight on the influence of telework on work-family interface. And as I said, enrichment is perhaps the most used recently variable for this positive side of the work-family interface. And as I said, of course, telework is a source of flexibility, time flexibility, as I said, to reduce commuting, children, etc. But there are also other sources of flexibility at the company that is time flexibility. In the analysis of empirical experience telework, we don't want to forget other sources of flexibility, other sources of human resources. We define, this is the redefinition of the literature just to clarify concepts. Work-family enrichment, as I said, is probably the most common, the most frequent variable used for describing this positive side of the work-family interface. It's defined, one of the definitions of the most frequently cited authors in this topic, is the extent to which experiences in one role improves the quality of life in the other role. For instance, if you as a father or as a mother at home can learn multitasking abilities in your parenting role, then these multitasking abilities can be used, can be deployed as well as at work. Means that the role you play at home, the role you play in the family as a parent, can be used as well positively in your work, and vice versa. Enrichment is also bidirectional, means that there is a positive influence of work on family, and it's also a positive influence of family on work. So we can use the same methodology that I usually use in conflict studies. And precisely the flexibility that is derived from telework arrangements is precisely can be one major driver of this enrichment process of the interface between work and family. And as another idea to include as a framework is to deal with boundary strategies, meaning how people separate or how people integrate work and family activities inside the home, inside the home. And it's possible to integrate or it's possible to segmentate. I mean, it's possible to separate. When you are working at home, you stay at your room and nobody can enter into your room. Or you can define your work area at home that will be able to interact with other members of the family. So there are different implications on how to manage these boundary strategies between work and family at home. And this is the research model. The work we will propose that the work will be positively related to work-related outcomes like job satisfaction, organizational commitment, honor, etc. But we are going to use a word like balance work family enrichment, more precisely as a mediator between telework and work-related outcomes. And we are going to use several moderated effects between this relationship of telework and work-life balance, like how teleworkers, how employees manage the boundary strategies. I mean, the ability and willingness to change the boundaries at home, to integrate or to separate working and family activities. And of course, I'm going to use as well, as I said, another sources of flexibility for employees, like other flexibility practice, the organizational culture that supports flexibility at support level, at supervisor level, or top management level, etc., etc. And as I said, we are in the process of developing the questionnaire and selecting the sample, and also to do afterwards the empirical study. But we have a preliminary study. It was carried out at the regional government in our city, in our region, and we developed a questionnaire with 20% response rate of 19 employees, that about what family conflicts and the need of flexibility. And the results indicate that those employees value very highly the need of flexibility to balance work and family. And these employees thought that with home-based telework they could manage the work-family interface very much as well. They could improve the interface between work and family. Also, those employees with high need of flexibility were more willing to telework, and those were those employees that were experiencing more higher family work conflict. I mean, the employees needed of higher flexibility were also employees that were actually experiencing this family work conflict. And as I said, they were more willing to telework as well. They also perceive more benefits. They also perceive more positive benefits from telework that employees who needed less flexibility to balance work and family. And they also perceive less disadvantage of telework. And regarding the boundary strategies of these potential teleworkers, basically they were more in favor of separating activities between work and family. Well, they have some other relationship, but as I said, our concluded remarks would be to focus on for family enrichment. I think this could improve the analysis of the interface, and also we say that boundary flexibility can be a striking moderator effect, and potentially we find that employees are very interested in these measures of flexibility and are hoping to benefit from the adoption of telework in their working lives. Thank you very much.
We can take one question because of time. Anyone?
I have one. If somebody else needs.
Yeah.
Poland and Spain are the European leaders in precarious employment, fixed-term employment. Precarity is a companion concept to flexibility. Enrichment has a partner concept of impoverishment. Your data comes from a public sector organization, a large one, and from people who already have families. What about people who do not have families because of their telework, which is part of this large concept? So, to recontextualize your analysis, how virtuous your circle might be in the opposition to a vicious circle that 27% or 1/3 of Polish workers, or Spanish as well, experience. A very broad comment rather than a question.
Yeah, that's right. Spain is one of the bigger European countries about flexibility. I mean, temporary employment. Flexibility is in a big word. I mean, you can mean different things by the same word. I would say that temporary employment, I don't know, sometimes can be characterized by the negative side of flexibility. It's a negative phase of flexibility. This measure like telework, this practice like telework, I would say they are focused more on the positive side. A flexibility measure that try to improve not only organizational performance, but also people's lives. That's why we are trying to focus on this kind of measures like telework or other polyvalence, skill polyvalence, etc. Because I would say that those are measures, flexibility practices that can contribute to improve the performance of the company, but can also contribute to improve the lives of employees. But anyway, we are always very cautious to integrate all measures of flexibility in order to analyze the influence of this human resource flexibility on organizational performance. And we did very recently a study comparison different measures of human resource flexibility, and we find that positive measures of human resource flexibility in temporary employment contribute negatively to our organization. I mean, negatively related to our organizational performance. And of course, yeah, that's right. I mean, you can analyze conflict, you can analyze enrichment, whether you have a family or not. Whether you have a family or not, is how your work interferes with your personal life in general. Of course, I mean, as you can see in the slides, there were also some pictures of children around, because of course, some people say that you shouldn't use bad companies anyhow. So it means that how do you improve your personal life, whatever you have a family or not. But of course, the literature says that these variables like the presence of children at home, how many children, if the children are very small or not, is a critical moderator variable that can help you to understand more the relationship between telework and family values. But you can analyze as well the interface whether you have a family or not.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your interesting lectures. I'm saying this to all of the speakers, and I invite you for a quarter of break now. Thank you very much.